Nutty copy test to keep the cashews flowing in. Today is National Nut Day, so we've attributed some humor to our content for this session. I do have Erin Sagin from WordStream and Aaron Levy from Elite SEM on the line. Thank you guys for joining us today. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. So Aaron Levy is a client manager at Elite SEM. He has 10 years of experience in PPC. Geez, Aaron, you're old for this industry. And then we have Erin Sagin. Erin Sagin is our PPC evangelist and community manager. She has been at WordStream for 4 years. Welcome, guys. And we want to learn a little bit about you guys and how much experience you have. So if you don't mind, I have a poll question here. How long have you guys been using AdWords? Do you have a year of experience, 5 years experience, 5+ years experience? We'd love to learn a little bit more about you. Looks like we have a good healthy mix, about 36%, less than 1 year, 36% also 3 to 5 years. Awesome. So thank you everybody who is on the line. And without further ado, I'm going to close this poll and hand it over to my team here for this session.
All right, perfect. So yeah, thank you guys so much for coming and thanks to all for the introduction. Before we get started with our 11 copy tests, I wanted to do a quick intro to talk about, why we're so obsessed with click-through rates in the PPC world. And I think there's the very obvious, we want people to come to our site. And of course, the more people we get to our site, the more conversions we'll hopefully start to yield. But the other thing to keep in mind is that click-through rates have a huge, huge impact on our quality scores. In fact, I believe that they're the #1 driver of quality score. So it's something that you really want to focus on, and you should always be striving for better. And a lot of people ask us, what is the best click-through rate? Well, it really depends. And the reason it depends is because it's totally dependent on your position. So the higher the position, the higher the expected click-through rate. Google basically says, hey, if you're in position #1, of course you're going to get more clicks. Despite, maybe your ad may not be perfect, but you're going to get more clicks because you're in that top position. So they kind of expect better of you. And then as we go down the line to a lower position, well, if you're still getting a somewhat decent click-through rate on those, that's wonderful in Google's eyes. It's like, wow, you're in 6th position and you're still scoring clicks. That's pretty impressive. So you should be assessing your click-through rates really based on the performance or the position of your ad. And moreover, you should really always be striving for higher. So do not, sorry, this last nut pun I'll make, do not settle for average. As you can see here, the vast majority advertisers are kind of around that orange line when it comes to their average click-through rate. But nobody really wakes up in the morning and they're like, oh, I want to be an average person today. Like your mom probably never sat you down and was like, all right, honey, let's get some average grades this quarter. So you really should be focusing to get above average. And as you can see, there's a lot of room for opportunity. The green line is 2 times the expected click-through rate. And you see there are people achieving that. And there are even people achieving this purple line, this really kind of impressive 3 times Google's expected click-through rate. So even if you feel as though your ads are pretty good, I think there's definitely room for improvement, definitely room to consider testing them. All right, so that gets us over to our 11 nuttiest ad copy tests. And I'll pass it over to Aaron to walk through his first one.
So to be candid, there was no reason we picked 11. It just seemed like a fun number. But in any case, we're going to give an overview of a bunch of tests that are maybe a little outside the box, a little bit different than offer testing, and doing some more fun things, some ideas for your accounts to toy around with. So I'm going to come out swinging. I'm going to start with something that's a little bit aggressive and kind of against everything that we're probably preaching or probably what you've heard. My nutty ad copy test number 1 is don't test anything. Just leave it there. So if you think about your AdWords accounts or your clients' AdWords accounts, we all have these kind of weird keywords. We have our best keywords. We have our favorite ones. We have these ones that take up, upwards of half of our budget. And if you think about it, if you mess with something that takes up half of your budget, and let's be candid, not every keyword test or every ad copy test works as well as we would hope. We can't all be that beautiful purple line that Erin showed before. In some cases, that ad copy test loses. So if you have a test that loses with half your budget, that can cause some pretty big problems. It's not just like, well, this had a little impact. It can cause some pretty dramatic shifts in your account. So for a real-life example, I have one client where about half of their budget is devoted to one keyword. It just sort of worked out that way. It's their best performer and happens to take up most of their budget. And what we see is if we can take that keyword lower and lower and lower, we devote most of our time to bringing the keyword's CPC down. We work really, really hard to get our quality score nice and high. We work really, really hard to get our click-through rates nice and high. And we want to keep that. We don't want that shift to change because we know that if something that takes up 50% of our budget costs $1 and we drop it down to 20 cents, that's amazing. If it kicks back up to $1, then it went from half of our budget to 80% of our budget. So we take this keyword that we spent so much time focusing on. We've spent so much time honing search query reports and tweaking little itty-bitty words in the ad copy test. We get it to a great place, and then we launch our first ad copy test, and we just destroy everything that we have built. So the blue line represents click-through rate, and the orange line represents cost per click for this one single keyword, for this one client. Again, one keyword. We launch an ad copy test, and it goes okay. Even though it was a successful ad copy test, our cost per click still spiked up because every time you launch a new ad copy test, it resets Google's ad history. It takes a little while for Google to catch up. So we found that every time we launched an ad copy test, even if it worked, there was a period of fluctuation before things normalized out, which when it takes up half of your budget, if you see a fluctuation in half of your budget that goes upwards, that can be a pretty big hurt for a couple of days. And we saw it pretty consistently every single time we launched an ad copy test, which I'm sure you can pretty clearly identify. So once an ad copy test wound down and we got that normalization after a couple of days, okay, good, our CPC normalized a little bit. We turned it back and we launched another ad copy test that went horrible. Ad copy test didn't work, CPC goes up. Smashed again. Ad copy test really doesn't work, CPC goes way up. You get the point. We kind of do the same thing over and over again in these ad copy tests, which conventional wisdom says you should be testing all the time. But if it's your best keyword and you know that some of these tests don't work, maybe you don't come out of the gate testing with your best stuff and you start focusing on a couple of smaller things to start. Once we stopped testing ads on these keywords and instead we focused on tweaking extensions, if we had a sale, we would add a new site link. But we stopped kind of flip-flopping with all of our different ad copy tests. We found that CPC kind of normalized back to where it was when we first started. So before we started, we had a 19% click-through rate and like a $4 CPC. While we were testing, $5.50 CPC with a smaller CTR. We stopped and it went right back down to where it was. So if you think half of your budget can absorb a 30% fluctuation, then by all means, test on it. If not, maybe reserve the tips that we do a little bit later that we go through for the next 10. Maybe reserve them to some smaller campaigns so you can test small before you expand it to everything else.
All right, my turn. Number 2, tap into FOMO to inspire action. So FOMO is the fear of missing out. And I think we're probably all familiar with the principle of scarcity. Essentially, we as humans are motivated by the fear of losing out. So you can see this squirrel stockpiling nuts. It's like, hey, in the fall when nuts are available, he's going to grab a ton of nuts so he can survive the winter. And we humans do something very similar. So, yes, if any of you guys are familiar with Lilly Pulitzer, they partnered with Target earlier this year, and they were incredibly successful because they used this concept of FOMO. Essentially, they partnered with Target, and they said, we're going to offer these really expensive dresses on the cheap through Target, but it's only for a limited amount of time, and we have limited stock. So if you want it, you better come get it and get it quickly. And here you can see what happened. The news went crazy. People, I tried to go, and it was like you couldn't even pull into the Target parking lot because there were lines at the door. People were demolishing stores. They were fighting over things. They were grabbing things in every shape and size possible because they knew that the opportunity was not going to last. So you can see, like, people, look at the lady with the shopping cart. She went like bananas with all of this horrible Lilly Pulitzer crap because she knew that it was a limited time offer. And so you can do this with your PPC ads. You can leverage this sense of urgency by using countdowns. And if you look at these two ads, I mean, sale ends in 4 hours. All right, you're a little bit nervous. You're like, I should probably go buy a TV. They're cheap. It's ending in 4 hours. And then when you see that it ends in 1 hour, it's like your anxiety kind of increases and you're panicking and you fear that you will miss out on it. So you're more likely to convert. And we see this on a regular basis. You're more likely to convert when you know that supply is limited or your sale is ending. You can see that's like fear-induced running. All right.
We accidentally turned this into like an all-squirrel webinar instead of a nut joke webinar, so we're sorry.
Okay, there's not a lot you can do with nuts, so yeah, definitely a lot of squirrels in this. And then the concept of using these countdowns is actually kind of a pain, right? Like, no one has time to go in and update their ads on a regular basis, especially during busy seasons like the holidays. So luckily, earlier this year, Google automated this process, so they gave us ad customizers, which is essentially a little snippet of code that you can use within your ad text that enables you to do things like a countdown to the end of a sale. So it's really, really simple. All you have to do is plug the information in, and it will dynamically insert this information in your ad copy to produce this sort of a countdown. And I encourage you, look at ad customizers. There's a lot that you can do with them from a location perspective. There's all sorts of things you can do, but my personal favorite is the countdown because I do believe it's just so, so impactful. And you can kind of go nuts with it. So if any of y'all are subscribers to J.Crew, they kind of use these perpetual sales, and you would think it would become a boy who cries wolf type scenario. It's like, oh, there they go at it again. There's another sale, or they're running low on products again. But it's crazy how incredibly well this works. And even I am a marketer, I am well aware that J.Crew is going to have a sale tomorrow that's just as good as the sale today, and I still fall for this. Like, the shirt I'm wearing now is a product of one of these stupid sales, and it's because it works. So definitely leverage these things to create ongoing sales or demonstrate ongoing kind of dwindling product supply.
Okay, now I will take over a little bit. So my number 3 nutty ad copy test is just, sounds a little weird that it's a test or a tip, but try writing like a human. So think about what we all do whenever we write our ad copy test. We are all so excited. Every single ad on pretty much any search term you go for, it'll have an exclamation point or like 7. Every site link will be really, really excited because we really, really want to buy shoes. And it kind of always looks the same, and I never really challenged it. We sort of all just assumed that it worked. Some of the tests that I saw, 3 or 4 years ago when some friends looked at it, it didn't really make a difference if we kept it off. So yeah, why not? We'll just keep on being really ecstatic about getting 25% off comfortable women's shoes. So if you can look at Clark's own ad. They're a branded ad, and they're actually an elite client. So I'm making fun of my buddies. But even then. Free shipping, woo, party, shop now, woo, shop now. we're really, really excited all the time because we want to create that urgency in our customers. But does that actually work? So I ran a test with one of my clients. Fair warning, this is a very small and unscientific test, but it's really something that I'm kind of encouraging everyone to look at for themselves. Run a test on your own campaigns and just see. So what I did is I took the ads that we would normally write that are all caps everything. We write it like the title of a book, where women's capital, shoes capital, buy, Clark's capital, large, so on and so forth. And I wrote it in sentence casing. Obviously, I'm not QVC, but for the client that we did, we took everything that was normally the all caps with an exclamation point, that really sort of weird, exciting ad that we had, and I wrote it instead like you would write a normal sentence, like a normal human would write, like you would write an email. If you got an all-caps email, you would think the person was either really mad or really annoying, but we all write our ads that way. So what happens if we change? What I found is that the sentence casing actually got a poorer click-through rate. The yelly ads, as I like to call them, got a 10.5% click-through rate, whereas the sentence case got like a 9% click-through rate. So, all right, well, test failed. Right? No. We have to look beyond just click-through rate. So what I found is that the sentence-cased ads actually got a way higher conversion rate. So while the kind of yelling ads that we all use got a higher click-through rate, the sentence-cased ads provided a better return and got more sales overall. So that's a little puzzling. When you're doing ad copy tests, as Erin mentioned, like click-through rate is definitely what we all focus on for ad copy tests, but don't forget about the kind of down the line thing. So are we getting the right people to click, or are people just clicking because they see lots of all caps and they click on everything? So why did this happen? And again, I call this an unscientific test because this was over the course of like 3 weeks and like 10,000 impressions. Not statistically significant, but interesting. So I have a theory. Have you ever watched, well, I suppose you can't answer, but think if you've ever watched your mom or your grandma or your uncle, someone going through and searching for something. Everyone uses the web different, and I think that the people that are actually going through and reading every single word of our ads are the ones who are buying more stuff. It's going to be a more qualified customer if someone reads it like a sentence versus someone just clicks on it because it's visually appealing. Now, you want to have a balance where you get the good click-through rate and good conversion rate. But think about your audience. Is it someone who's going to take their time when they're browsing the web, or is someone going to be all willy-nilly like me and just click on everything? In any case, worth a test. If you think about again, the kind of mothers versus standard people, 89% of paid clicks are incremental, meaning people never really get to the organic results. Or some people click on only paid, some people click on only organic. It's a weird study, so if you go on Think with Google, they have this available to read further. But think about the people that are clicking on paid ads, and if you want them to read everything or if you want them to click on it, just think about your audience and write an ad that makes the most sense for them.
All right, my turn, which is number 4, leverage emotional triggers. This is one of my favorite things to do in ads because it's by far the most fun. So, let's get started. Maybe. Okay, so if you're like me, emotion inspires action for you. So this guy is crying because his friend didn't answer Skype and he turns to peanut butter. I turn to ice cream and I am frustrated. But we know as humans, emotion inspires action. And in fact, we can look at kind of the top emotions here. And what you should be using to drive your ad text creation. So number 1, amusement, things that are funny, interest, surprise, happiness, and we go down the line. So, as you can see, Wonderful Pistachios has like nailed this. They've done all of these incredible ads that are highly, highly amusing. So this was an old Super Bowl ad where they used Sigh, and it was almost impossible to choose which GIF to use because there were so many good ones. At one point, he like rides the pistachio like a donkey through the screen, so that was my second choice. But my point is they have these hilarious ads that are really entertaining. And it's really hard to write ads like this for paid search. Like sure, when you're doing a TV ad, of course you can make it entertaining and emotionally stimulating. But when you have a very limited number of characters, how can you actually do that? I think a lot of people don't bother trying because they assume with ad text for paid search, all they have to write is something that's really boring, really bland, really quick, and like stuffs it full of keywords. Well, here's how I do it. And I borrowed this from Perry Marshall, but it's this concept of a Swiss Army knife. So plot out, who is your customer, right? What's the thing that your customer loves, something they hate? You, of course. Not that they hate you, but plot out yourself. Consider your customer's worst enemy, and they're also their best friend, right? And there's connections through all of these. And if we can kind of connect the dots and create like ads based on these connections, we can create a really emotionally stimulating ad. So I figured I would give it a shot. And so, after I move to the next one. Yep, so consider Ashley Madison, right? We had this huge data leak, and all of the names of these cheating husbands were released to the world. And it probably will definitely cause a lot of divorces. So as a divorce lawyer, unfortunately, this is like a godsend, right? Because you have all of these new kind of freshly scorned women out there who are looking for a lawyer to divorce their crappy, cheating, jerk husband. If you're going to write an ad as a divorce lawyer, and I see it all the time, most people write like these really, really bland ads, like divorce lawyer in New Jersey will help you divorce your husband, right? Okay, boring. Like, you might click on that, but probably not the most compelling ad. If you use this concept of the Swiss Army knife, let's start plotting out what we would use in our ad. So you are the divorce lawyer. Your customer is this scorned wife. A thing that your customer loves is getting revenge. And a thing that your customer hates is the fact that her husband is messaging these other women. And finally, the customer's worst enemy is her jerk cheating husband. So when we combine all of these elements, we can create an ad that truly matches the emotional state of these women, right? So who is your husband with now? Or who is your husband with? Is he sleeping with her right now? Get revenge and a smile on your face. By tapping into these, unfortunate feelings of this woman, this lawyer is really, truly going to connect with her, and they're more likely to click. And we see, in comparison to that crappy, boring, stale ad, we're getting 30% more clicks on this one because it is so emotionally compelling. So I know it can be tough when you are working with a limited character count, and we're not all advertising for like very sexy industries, but I think there's a lot you can do by leveraging that Army knife to get yourself thinking and start brainstorming some really creative ad copy that will catch people by surprise and really kind of nail their emotional state. Hang on one sec, Erin, we can't hear you.
There we go. AC switches off. I hope. I think we're back. You should be able to hear me now.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully that won't happen again. Okay, so my number 5 ad copy tip is be a jerk. So this applies mostly to competitors, so it's actually an interesting transition from Erin talking about divorce lawyers. I will talk about being mean to all of your competitors. So do a search for yourself, because we all like to do that. So I was doing a search for Elite SEM, and you see these guys. Sorry if anybody from New Jupiter Media is on here, but hate you guys. And this is really a pretty common strategy across all industries. You'll see a lot of times, with competitor ads, you'll try to draw attention away from them because these are really tough ads to succeed on, really tough keywords to convert on. They're generally expensive, but you're trying to steal ads and clicks away from your competitors. So you have to be pretty compelling and do things that are a little bit mean. And they're not the only ones. It's pretty commonly circulated around the Samsung Galaxy ads when you search for iPhone or 6S, and they have pretty compelling ad copy that pops in and say, like, this is way more than a phone. This is way cooler than an iPhone. Or this ad for Mixpanel, which is a website testing tool. Optimizely is bidding on the word Mixpanel and saying, ooh, like you obviously meant to search for the better tool. So it's kind of mean. It's not necessarily something that your competitors would really appreciate, but it draws attention. It stands out. I just really wanted an excuse to talk about the beautiful three peanuts in a shell. So they stand out. There's something that stands out a little bit different. They're the ones that you grab first because there's something different. It's something that you're not necessarily used to. So when you're running your competitive ads, which is a pretty common paid search strategy there, right, that you bid on your competitors' terms, you can't just show up there with your old standard ad. You kind of have to think of where you stand as far as price, quality, features in general, or since this is the section about being a jerk, think about what they suck at. And by that, I mean, don't just bid on competitors' names. Think about when people are searching for cancel or review. If you search for cancel ADT security systems or cancel Comcast, to me it's a no-brainer that you would have, that you as a competitor would want to bid on that and show up with a new offer or something to get people more excited. In the MailChimp review, maybe point out things that you beat MailChimp at, show that you're a little bit more affordable or that you have better mailing features. Think about ways that you can beat people who are already in a research phase. They're probably already considering you as another option, and you can stand out with some different price points.
That was actually pretty smart. I mean, all of your points are smart, but that one was really good. Okay, so mine, number 6, is use real numbers. And this seems so silly, but it really does make a difference. So how many ads out there do you see that are kind of like, oh, we have the largest selection, or like we have so many used cars, or whatever, right? People kind of flaunt, they have such a broad variety of things. But if you get down to it, a lot of people are kind of like, oh, okay, like, doesn't everyone say that? We're naturally skeptical. So what you need to be doing in your ad copy is using numbers to kind of make things more concrete. So you can see the ad here that specifically shows that they did 1,500 plus proven tests was the ad that performed better. In fact, it's significantly better, 88% higher click-through rate. And if you look at it kind of even deeper, what we see is had they gone kind of one step further and said, 1,542 proven tests, they probably would have had an even higher click-through rate. Because again, the more specific the number, the more real it feels to us. We don't feel like somebody's using this marketing hyperbole. We feel as though people are actually telling us what they're offering. And this is totally unscientific, but I will say Larry can swear by it. If you use prime numbers, it works better, and people believe it even more. I don't know where he got that from. I did a bunch of research today to see if it was true, and I found nothing to corroborate it, but if Larry says it, usually he's right. So I'm going to throw that out there. Try working with prime numbers.
I've actually seen really oddly similar things when you price, you put a price in an ad that's like, hey, buy 5 pounds of mixed nuts for $23.47. For some reason, that works better than $22.99. I don't understand it, but hey, maybe it stands out. So number 7, I'm stealing from the old recycling phrase, or maybe switching around a little bit. So think global, act local. At Elite, a large percentage of our clients are kind of, multiple store owners. So they own, 100 stores, 100 service locations, whatever it may be, which I think is probably not too abstract. A lot of people have that. But think about an emergency. Think about, if you see a cockroach running across your floor, or if a robber breaks into your house and steals all of your hamburgers, or if you have a toilet plugged up. you're likely not going to take the time to sit there on your phone or your computer and type out, where do I find a plumber in Center City, Philadelphia? You're just going to type plumber, and that's all you're going to write. So people won't really self-qualify as locals, but they know what will really stand out to them is if they get something around, some copy around like, okay, find a plumber in my area. If I'm looking for a plumber, I don't really want to find a quote. Like, I don't want to get multiple free quotes. I want to call someone and I want to have them come and unclog my toilet. For the record, I tried really hard to find a picture of walnuts in toilet. Never mind. So Google always says that, near me queries have doubled in the past couple of years because, honestly, the reason that they've doubled and they've grown so much is because Google put them in search suggest. It's not because people's behavior has changed. It's because Google kind of made it change. People don't always self-select. So we as advertisers are kind of flying blind. We can personalize copy, of course, based on where people's geography are, but that's not really a scalable solution. So in the case where we're working with 100 odd locations, you're not gonna write 100 different pieces of ad copy. When we wind up showing localized intent in copy, when we put Philadelphia locksmith or 24-hour Center City, PA locksmith, things like that, we see anywhere from like a 10 to a 50% increase in click-through rate, whether or not people put Philadelphia in their queries. So how do you scale that? Fun nut fact, this is a picture of cashews. They are poisonous until they are washed, so don't eat them raw. So tip one, or your option A for this is, you start small. Say you're, a national franchisor that has locations in like 50 or 60 cities. Don't do all 50 or 60 at once. Take like 3 of them, and maybe add the city name into the copy. Or in the case of Philadelphia, where we have a ludicrously long city name from a paid search perspective, just sneak it in the display URL, hide it in extension somewhere, put it in site links. Just see what happens when you start on a really small scale. But again, the problem here is scaling. How do we do this? A lot of times. So option B is you hire like 50 or 60 interns, you clone your top campaigns for every location you service, you write specific copy for every location, and then nobody wants to do that, the interns. Option C, which Erin alluded to before, is try using ad customizers. So in addition to doing ad customizers for Countdown, you can create a location feed that says, when a person is in location X, show this copy. So this particular example is for someone who's selling stand mixers in a store. But think about what you could do for, locations for, if you're an exterminator, just put in, eliminate pests in Philadelphia. We'll come visit you right now. Something that creates urgency and lets people know that this is for me. Now, there are a couple of cautions to think of when working with a location feed. Philadelphia and Denver are drastically different length of words. Denver is very short, Philadelphia is very long. So your ads can look a little weird. So make different location feeds or have them, different pieces of ad copy depending on city name. You'll have to toy around with it a little bit because you'll have to write different copy and pull in different feeds. So if you try to just put one, you might have a really short ad for one city and a really long one for another. But if you try to mess around with different feeds, you can get ads that look pretty consistent and look like they were written by a human.
All right. This one is mine, which is focus on the customer. And we are incredibly nuts about ourselves. Like, we are all looking for things for ourselves. We're self-centered. You can see at one point I had like 1 million pictures of selfies as I tried to tone it down. So as advertisers, we should really be creating customer-centric copy. And when you look at these 2 segments of copy, I think it's very clear. Welcome to our site. We're a professional house cleaning service based out of Austin. We serve the greater Austin area and have the best rates in town. Yada, yada, yada. Like, that doesn't feel like it is going to benefit me. I mean, it's nice, like it's a good cleaning service, but it doesn't really kind of hit home. But then when we look at customer-centric ad copy, are you tired of cleaning your own home? Do you have better things to do? You're like, well, yeah, I totally do. I hate cleaning, and like I would much rather watch TV. So this customer-centric ad copy really does resonate with us, and this should carry over into your ad copy. So when we look at these two ads, I think it's pretty obvious which one scored a higher click-through rate. It's the one that really looks at the customer and shows what's in it for them. You know, the first one got a 13%, and the supply warehouse with the customer service as our #1 priority had like 5 times that. So really make sure your ads are conveying to the user how you can help them. And you can see another example of it here. You know, when you tell the searcher what's in it for them, your click-through rates start to skyrocket.
So number 9, I'm kind of being a contrarian for this whole webinar, so just bear with me and let me have my rebel phase. So number 9 is break all the rules. So you think about what a standard ad copy or what standard ad copy looks like. We have 25 characters for the headline. We have 35 characters for the display URL. We have 35 characters for the 2 description lines. But wait a minute. Exercise bike pedal straps, that seems like it's a little bit longer, and best triathlon bike shoes, like that seems longer than 25 characters. Actually, exercise bike pedal straps is, I believe, 29 or 30 characters, and best triathlon shoes is 28. And I conducted these today, so don't try to tell me they were old ads. They're cheating, and I think you all should cheat too, or at least try, because you can take up a lot more ad real estate. And we know from our test with extensions that the more real estate you take up, the better your click-through rate is, the less you pay, the happier your boss is. So, dynamic keyword insertion. Now, we've all seen dynamic keyword insertion go horribly, horribly, horribly wrong. So by all means, if you're going to use it with caution, and don't spray it across your entire account. I believe Larry's exact phrase is dynamic keyword insertion makes unicorn sad or something. I don't know. If you're going to use it, which I think can be used in the right scenario, you have to be really, really careful with it and be really deliberate. So I'm going to give a brief dynamic keyword insertion use case. So I have a client that sells baby products. So one of their brands is 7th generation, which if you spell it out, which you should, because if you write the number 7, the brand yells at you. If you spell it out, that's 18 characters. That's pretty much your entire headline. And the top products they sell are diapers, which are 7 characters without the space, and laundry detergent, which is 17 characters without the space. Okay, so you don't have a prayer of writing a headline that has 7th generation diapers or 7th generation laundry detergent, or even 7th generation detergent. And we know that we want to get something besides just the keyword in place. We want to get the brand name in there, and we also want to get some value propositions. So if you were to write this with a traditional sense and just throw it in AdWords Editor would reject it, and it would give you like the red bar of death, and it would be horrible. But if you do something similar, where you set a headline that says buy keyword 7th generation, and you insert the keyword in the description line. Now it won't fire up every time. In my experience, it's been kind of hit and miss when it fires and when it doesn't. But what you'll often find is that even though you have a placeholder that's pretty good, so your placeholder, in case 7th generation fires, you're okay. Buy 7th generation is not a bad headline. But what we found is that about half the time, we found that we were getting about a 30-character headline. We were getting our 35-character headline. We didn't usually see the description line 1 firing, because that would have been like a 43 or 44-character description line, which is pretty long. But we see that dynamic keyword insertion lets us break the rules a little bit and lets us make ad copy a little bit higher. And in each case that we tried this, we tested it against a standard ad that didn't have keyword insertion, and in every case, the ad with keyword insertion won. But again, you have to be really, really careful with this and don't just do it blindly. My personal record, I got a 42-character headline once. I'm weirdly proud of that. I clearly need more interesting hobbies, but whatever. Remember, when you're dealing with dynamic keyword insertion, you have to think about what the end ad is going to look like. Remember our conversation before about sentence casing. So if you're doing something with sentence casing, and like, for example, the term that you're trying to get to fire is 7th generation, or 7th generation diapers, excuse me, know that if you use the top version, that all 3 words will be capitalized. If you lose the lower, the second one, they'll all be lowercase. Just be aware of how they work, just in case there's specific brand restrictions or there's a specific way that you want things to fire. Make sure that it syncs with the rest of your ad, or else things will look really, really bad. And one, while we're going back to countdowns, just be aware that the same casing sense applies to countdowns. Countdowns by default show lowercase. So if you have ad copy with all uppercase and you want to say like sale ends in 5 minutes, the M is going to be lowercase. So just make sure that everything syncs and don't forget to write like a human. So if you want to protect yourself and try this, again, to avoid the horror stories, create single keyword ad groups for the dynamic keyword insertion stuff that you want to test, because essentially what you're saying, you're just kind of hoping. It's basically, you basically already written the ad and just hoping that the keyword fires into it. If it doesn't, you'll be fine. There's literally no risk at all. It might make management a little bit harder, but there's no risk and the potential for reward is huge.
All right, this is my last one, and it's use a mobile-specific strategy. This is so, so important. I think so many advertisers out there just think they can kind of flip on bid modifiers and call it a day. They don't make any tweaks to their mobile ad text or really consider that mobile searchers are in a completely different situation than a desktop searcher. So, one thing to think about when you're working with mobile searchers is that they are like incredibly easily distracted. And as a society, I mean, our attention spans are brutal to begin with, and rapidly decreasing, to be honest. In fact, I think that we have shorter attention spans than a goldfish, according to Microsoft right now, and that changed in the last 5 years. The reason being, we are so heavily kind of connected to technology, so much is going on around us that we can no longer kind of zone in. So we're all super ADD, and we need to create ad text that really kind of scoops up the mobile searcher's attention, right? You have limited time to grab their attention. So there is no excuse whatsoever not to use mobile-specific ad copy. And you should be taking that even one step further by using things like ad extensions. Now, click-through rates are terrible on mobile in general, but as you can see, using these extensions yields so much higher conversion rates if you can get them to show. So I recommend specifically using app extensions. If you've taken the time and invested the resources to create an app, you should absolutely be promoting it through your ad copy on mobile. It's a good way to get your app found. I think 50% of apps are discovered through search, but it's also a great way to encourage people to return to the app. And because apps tend to yield higher conversion rates, you really want to make sure the opportunity for someone to visit one is there and available to them. And then also you want to use call extensions. You're going to, if you can give people the opportunity to call you, not only is it probably going to be easier to convert them than on a mobile landing page, which we typically see lower conversion rates, but you're also acknowledging the fact that they're on a phone, like you're doing searches from a phone. The primary reason we have phones, surprising nowadays, is to call people. Give people the opportunity to do that through your ad copy. And then finally, you should be using new mobile ad formats if they're available to you. So a couple months back, Jerry Dishler, one of the VP of products at Google, announced that Google was acknowledging that it was tough to get high click-through rates and even tougher to get people to convert on mobile devices. And so they figured, at this point we need to take matters into our own hands and arm advertisers with the types of ads they need to encourage clicks and conversions. So for the top couple industries advertising on paid search, they created these unique ads specific to them. So as you can see here, and I'm sure you guys have noticed this, if you looked for a hotel room recently, you're not stuck with those crappy, boring, teeny tiny ads. You actually have this new ad format that gives you pictures and reviews, and you can even see their availability and all of the amenities right here within the ad on the SERP. That's a game changer. And if you are advertising for a hotel and you're not using these, then shame on you, because frankly, how on earth can you compete with something as beautiful as this when you're using just a regular old text ad? You can even go one step further and advertise for people to get a credit card on these SERPs. I mean, as you can see, Google has really catered these new ads specifically for the industry that they're serving. And I know that they're only available for a couple of people out there, and you may be kind of like this sad elephant, like, oh, that's great, but there's nothing good for my industry, thanks a lot. Well, the good news is that when Google released this information, they said, don't worry, this is just a testing ground for these, but we promise there are more to come. So I know this information is from 2011. It's largely still true. These are the top 10 industries that are advertising on AdWords. Google promised the top 10 industries would have special new ads, and probably the top 20. So we'll see more and more of these released over time, and all I can say is if you fall into any of these categories, take the time, if they're in beta, get involved with that beta, take the time to learn about them, because these are truly going to be game changers when it comes to mobile.
So, okay, I had the honor of both opening and closing this webinar, so I opened it with something a little contrarian that said don't test. Yeah, well, this one goes to 11. So my number 11 tip is to just test everything. Yeah, go nuts, have fun, see what works. We've already shown that having like copy that stands out and copy that's emotional and copy that's exciting really, really works. So I say have fun. Put a little emotion in your ads. Make them stand out. Be a little goofy. Be a little weird. Stuff that looks a little bit different is the stuff that is going to increase your click-through rate. If you have an ad that follows the exact same formula as everyone else's best practices, guess what? Like if we all have the same playbook and the same checklist, we're all going to look the same. If you have a little fun and you somehow get a squirrel to stand up to a smiley face on, it'll really stand out. It'll work really well. So just some examples that I found right now. So I did a search for Doge t-shirt, and whether eBay meant to do this or not, they optimized their shopping title to be in line with kind of Doge speak, which if anyone knows what that is, it's pretty funny. Such face, much meme, buy shirt. It's a little goofy, and I know that some people on our team tested it for a couple of custom shirts as well. Click-through rates were huge, and it's kind of small volume because not a lot of people are searching for Doge shirts. But it's really fun. It's fun for us as advertisers to put together, and it puts a little bit of spice in our day. Clients love to see it because it shows that we're thinking outside the box, and your boss would love to see it too if you work in-house. Some interesting stuff to test. Even most recently, like I looked for Amazon Echo, and they had this ad that's specifically tailored to developers. And again, like no best practice would ever say like, oh, you should have an introduction in your headline. No, but it stands out and it's interesting. And if it's the right people that are searching for Amazon Echo, it's definitely going to speak to them. Even this ad for Zendesk. Zendesk would, is a help desk software. So if you're searching for a broad term like trouble ticket software, give it a try and you'll see a whole bunch of people that brag about being in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and they have all these reviews and they have all these features, all sorts of stuff, but it all looks the same. The Zendesk ad really stood out because all they had was a warm little bit of branding. We deliver the software, you deliver the smiles. So doing little things like that that seem like they're contrarian to ad copy can really help you stand out in an otherwise pretty boring space. The thing that I've found is that if you make up a name for stuff, it works way, way better. So if you just happen to have a sale this weekend, yeah, whatever, call it something. This is the pre-Halloween, end of summer, mid-fall sale. We found that whenever you give a sale a name, it really makes it stand out versus just saying, hey, 25% off and free shipping. And it wasn't close. We found that by naming something, so for example, the Great Big Baby Sale, which was compared to 25% off, we saw an 11% lift in click-through rate and more than a 20% increase in conversion rate because it created urgency even without using site links because people think it's something new. Think it's something different besides just 20% off. We always get that. Yeah, forget it. Just make up your own best practices. Do whatever you think is cool. Do whatever fits with your brand. Try testing without a call to action. Try testing without value propositions. Try testing just outright goofy ads. I once tried to get fa la 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 in an ad for a Christmas sale. It only ran for about a day, and then Google rejected it because it turns out they don't like having 8 la's in the second description line. But it worked great for that one day that it was alive. And just try these things. Try these things that really make you stand out. They may not jive with what is conventional best practices or conventional ad testing. But as long as you have an open-minded boss, client, whoever, that lets you kind of explore your creative side, we can be creative in paid search too, even though we just have a couple of lines of text. And lastly, just make sure that you analyze your test results, and don't just look at the forest for the trees. Remember that if you're running an ad copy test across your account, yeah, you can roll things up and see how things perform for your entire brand, but keep in mind those keywords that we talked about first that dominate, 50% of all of your volume. If you see something that big, it's always going to rise to the top. If you think about, so I just really wanted to do a nut-based webinar so I could talk about the Brazil nut effect, which is an actual phenomenon in physics that explains why bigger things rise to the top, and they explain it by saying why Brazil nuts are always on the top. So the biggest stuff will always get the most attention and will always naturally rise to the top. Science says so. So make sure that when you're looking at your ad copy tests, don't just look at the one giant picture, but look at little pockets. So see how a piece of ad copy performs for your biggest keywords and your smallest keywords, for across categories, if categories sync or not. More often than not, yes, they will align, but there are cases when a certain piece of copy will align better with one category versus another. You have to make sure that you pay attention. My last test is make sure that your tests end. All too often I say, like, oh, we've been testing a piece of ad copy, but the test has been running for like a year, and that's not a test anymore. It's just sort of there. So when you're setting up an ad copy test, make sure you set a success metric. Are you looking to just boost click-through rate? Are you looking to boost, impressions to sales? Are you looking for a longer-term spread? And set a time frame. If you're bidding on really small keywords and you have a very small thing, maybe run it for a couple of months because that it'll take a while to accumulate impressions. But set an end date. And look small, but think big. So I mentioned before, don't just see the forest for the trees. Make sure you look at each individual patch to make sure that the results jive across each. And lastly, if you don't have a winner, don't worry about it. Just pick one. If your ad copy test has been running for 2 or 3 months and they're still neck and neck, guess what? Nobody's going to pull away. So you can pick whichever one you like more and then test it against something else. You should always be striving to do things better. So with the exception of those times when I said in the very first not to test, you should always be exploring a way to make yourself better. Erin alluded before, nobody's going to wake up in the morning and think like, man, I'm going to be extra average today. No, you should strive to do as best as you can. And hopefully these tips gave you some ideas to try things out and stand out from the crowd.
Wow, those were some great tips from the Erins. I appreciate you guys pulling those together. I think our audience is getting a lot out of it. If anyone on the line is interested, we do have some takeaways. We have a free guide on paid search keyword strategy, and if you're interested in an AdWords assessment, totally feel free to opt in for either option. But most importantly, we hope that you got a lot out of the webinar today. We thank Elite SEM for participating in our event, and please join us again soon. Thanks, guys.
You bet.